My fellow gamers, Monster Skater here, and well, today I will be celebrating my 400 subscribers special. And well, when it comes to today's special, I, Monster Skater, will be reading a clopfic. And yes, although I'm not doing it live or anything, considering using my live streams don't go well. You know what? Yeah. Let's begin story time. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Story time? Why, yes, it is story time. In fact, maybe if I get enough requests, maybe I'll start telling my own stories about my life. You know, basic things that are going on and such. Maybe I can make videos about me telling stories and name them story time. Maybe. Let's begin today's story time, which is called Mama. Let's start the clopfic, which is named Mama Fluttershy. And well, there's a warning. In fact, I'm gonna read it to y'all. That way, y'all can also know about this. Oh, here we go. Warning: extreme explicitity. Some of you may find this arousing. Yes, maybe myself. Some of you might find this disturbing. Yes, so no one forced you to read this. Well, except myself. And finally, not for the faint of heart, nor audience below 18, unless if you're dirty. Or something, I don't know. And yeah, so there... But you can... so you can back out now. Yeah, so you can either back out now if you don't want to hear a sexual story, or you can keep going. Yeah. Let's begin, shall we? Mama Fluttershy. As the butterfly flew past the window in the late afternoon evening, it could be for a moment enjoy the warm and soothing sunset and its wonderful orange and yellow. From the window of an isolated cottage at the borders of the everfree forest, a very fine and modest pony, known for a wonderful personality and adorable attitude, to her surroundings behind the beautiful horizon. Sure, she was among other things as a renowned doormat, but aside from that, also the kindest Pegasus alive in the land of Equestria. Her smiling face could enjoy the last warm rays of today's sun, something she more than happily experienced from her comfortable sofa. Fluttershy, a voice asked from nowhere, disturbing the mentioned pony's perfect balance of harmony and peace. What was that, Twilight? The yellow mare answered, concerned about her friend's presence and what she said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I dozed off. She then apologized with a slight blush over her pretty cheeks. The purple unicorn giggled and waved a forehoof from her wooden chair which she had taken from the kitchen. It was all right, according to her, especially since she knew all about her friend's current condition. After all, it was she who incredibly had introduced the shy little thing to the mighty stallion among stallions, Big Macintosh. He had done his part of the nature cycle, contributing to what every mare and stallion before or later goes through. I wonder if the foal is doing well, the lavender pony repeated in a calm tone, not minding at all that her friend missed that question. Fluttershy looked deep into Twilight's eyes for a split second, before glancing down at her swollen belly. She was in the family way, and she had walked that path the past months. It all began with a magical night, when the hunk of a stallion and the beauty of a mare agreed in a warm embrace to finally unite their legacies into a new pony, an offspring for them to call their own, and love to the end of their days. She then begged for the miracle of her life to smite her, nurture the egg in her body during the lustful period of estrus, so she can now sit her today with that round tummy. Fluttershy gently caressed her precious belly with both forehooves. She reminded of what she soon would become as soon as the little and live inside her was ready to wake up in the land of Equestria as another beloved subject to Celestia. A very happy smile struck her lips as she giggled back. Um, it's doing just fine. Won't be long until he or she is ready to come out, she said with a tone resembling excitement and joy, a tone Twilight couldn't resist cock her eyebrow at. And aren't you, scared that it'll hurt when it's time? We all know how delicate you are. The Lavender Mare did her best to not sound rude, smiling sheepishly to hide it further. But Fluttershy wasn't the pony made for such um, interpretations. She knew she was weak and defenseless when it came to such things. However, the smile remained as she kept her eyes on her large stomach. No, I wouldn't be afraid in any other cases, but when it comes to the idea of having my own foal, I'd do anything for it, she reassured before adjusting her sitting position. It wasn't so comfortable anymore. Meanwhile, Twilight smiled again and looked out through the window. She noticed right quick how it had been since she came here, just a few minutes ago. So when is Big Macintosh coming? So when is Big Macintosh coming back? She suddenly asked, getting down on her chair in order to prepare for her leave without Fluttershy's knowledge. The pregnant the pregnant Pegasus sighed and looked out at the sunset too, not even doubting her beloved stallion would be late. She said today's chores would take some time, and I thought it was okay since there's a little less than a month left. Wait. He said today's chores would take me some time, and I thought it was okay since there's a little less than a month left. As she finished that sentence, her eyes glanced away at something her friend had brought with her, resting on the small table between them. A little blue box with a red band wrapping it from all sides and meeting in the middle by a little rosette. Fluttershy spent a good 5 seconds beholding the ideal-looking present, knowing she forgot to bring up the subject about it. By the way, Twilight, she asked gently as a lavender equine would look over her shoulder. I just wanted to thank you for the present. What was it? Twilight looked at the little quadratic box. It was not wider than her own pad, yet so thin you'd wonder if it was just a card or something. Soon a smile revealed itself on her lips. A vehicle's going by. Hey, there you go. Just a little thing for you in the fall. Nothing special at all. Well, but I thought you should have it. Her response came before she turned back to the door and tried to exit. Fluttershy shifted her eyes between the little box and Twilight, unsure if to express her gratitude once again, just to make sure her friend understood what this meant to her. The other ponies inside her circle of friendship had already visited her several times to either congratulate or simply show their respect to her. Show their support to her. None of them doubted Fluttershy would be a wonderful mother. Is it okay? Is it okay if the yellow Pegasus tried to ask until the unicorn cut her off? It's alright, Fluttershy. Just remember to take care of yourself. We wouldn't want anything to happen to you. Twilight said as she magically opened the door leading out from the cottage. Fluttershy halted herself, having a slight problem understanding exactly what her friend meant by those words. But of course, they had to be of kind thoughts. What else? Um, so instead of any more unnecessary attempts, she waved a forehoof from her comfortable sofa to the pony, leaving her alone. Um, Twilight peeped inside from the wide narrow in the door, still smiling reassuringly while she closed it again. Out in the still warm evening, the well-read mare took her first steps out in the little farm Fluttershy always took care of. But now, when she was so deep in the pregnancy, Applejack and Pinkie Pie had more than happily helped her with the animals, while Rainbow Dash and Rarity took care of the necessary carpentry and shopping animal food. Hmm. Twilight glanced back at the cottage while she walked away from it, hoping her friend would find the curiosity to open the little gift. No, she wouldn't want anything to happen to you, Fluttershy. I mean, no, we wouldn't want anything to happen to you, Fluttershy. Um, and a sweet imagination and recall of old memories, Fluttershy found herself in her bedroom on the upper level of the humble home. She was laying in bed, feeling more warm than ever inside her body as she looked around in the darkened room, filled with tiny candlelight everywhere. She remembered where this was and realized her stomach was flat and fine. Her thoughts and expectations rested on the appearance of an even finer stallion. There he was, emerging from the darkness and getting up in bed. Big Macintosh. A gentle kiss from the strong and sturdy muzzle, and she was already gone in the passion. Her eyes rolled back in ecstasy when his large body carefully laid over to share his own heat with hers. The kissing grew intenser, and soon his red forelegs searched for her flank so he could adjust her correctly. He was dragged closer to the heart in erection, close enough for her sensitive marehood to receive its first kiss. Their loving eyes met together with two fitting grins, and as Big Macintosh laid his head over her shoulder, a faint gasp escaped Fluttershy's mouth. The appendage slipped in easily, breaking through her inner flesh to fill her with pleasure. But when the moaning was about to get serious and the thrusting even stronger, she felt a tickle in her snout. Phew. The most adorable sneeze escaped Fluttershy's snout as she woke up. Her eyes flew up in a flash for her to discover what had interrupted her wonderful dream. There was nothing she could be angry about, not even if she could, because the very reason for her return from the dream world was a small butterfly that decided to land on her snout only to fly away again. Oh, sorry, little friend. I wasn't prepared. She apologized and giggled over her own silliness. It was at that moment she realized she had fallen asleep on the sofa soon after Twilight's exit. She looked around, finally ending up looking out through the window. A question mark took form in her head while she saw Luna's moon in the darkened and star-filled canopy. She looked at the door and the bird's nest, the bird's nest and that angel sleeping in his basket, understanding in a set of seconds that she was still surrounded by sleeping animals, all alone. Big Mac, are you here? She called out without waking the animals. Sadly, she was answered with anything else but the mentioned pony's deep voice. A cold and silent breeze swept past the entire room, seeming to have appeared from nowhere. If it weren't for the open window right next to her. She shivered and decided it would be best to close it and get to bed. Done and done, she managed to get up even to her round belly, preventing most agile movements. Her wings weren't strong enough to handle this weight, so they only served as supporters together with her forelegs. She waddled up to the window and shut it, taking one last look through the glass in order to see if her stallion perhaps was close to the house. But he wasn't there. Apparently, he was still working with his chores at the farm, something Fluttershy knew was very important to the apple family. However, she couldn't hide her disappointment, being so much weaker and defenseless, and she usually wasn't with this little thing growing inside her. Thus, she sighed and tried to find a source of consolation for the male's absence. Perhaps something from the fridge to satisfy her hunger for the 11th time today, or perhaps it wasn't not until then Fluttershy remembered the little blue box lying all untouched on her little coffee table in the front of the sofa she spent most days sitting on. Yeah, yes. Oh, yes. Opening it to find out what Twilight brought her would surely calm her a little, especially if it was a card with a nice little text wishing her luck. She surely could use some more support right now. Thus she took a few steps to the table and carefully sat on the floor, reaching out with her forehooves to grab the thin present beautifully decorated in a ribbon. She looked at it a little more, flipping it upside down and gently squeezing it to determine what it actually was. Probably something on a piece of paper. So something on a piece of paper. She thought while biting the rosette to rip it off. As the band saw the floor, she unfolded the blue present paper piece by piece until it was fallen to the floor, leaving her with the present in her hooves. It was indeed some kind of paper, but the things written on it was certainly nothing she expected. A bleached brown parchment with a black circle in the middle, and mystic chanting scripted all around it. None of them made sense. Not the crosses, the lines, not even the tiny scratches covering most of the paper. It was like a dictionary example of something taken from Zikora's inventory. She cocked an eyebrow, unable to understand what this all meant to be and what purpose it served. But even more suddenly than when she remembered this present, her eyes slowly figured out the symbol in the middle of the large circle, rested above a single line crossing past horizontally, perfectly placed in the middle and like it measured the diameter. She narrowed her eyes and leaned close to it, pouting her lips like it would help for reasons she didn't know of. Advocavoro. She didn't know what it meant, but that's what it apparently said. But how could she read it and understand it? Its language wasn't of equestrian kind. It made pretty much no sense no matter what she tried to come up with. And just as her thoughts began to surround Twilight's intentions with this present, she only had time to widen her eyes in absolute shock and fright. The line crossing circle opened, revealing a dark void in the middle of a pool of white filling the circle. And in that instant, all the drawn symbols illuminated a dark blue light, growing stronger for each passing second. As the newly opened eye on the parchment moved around in the chaos, a swirling noise sounding like it absorbed and consumed something echoed out in the big room. Ah! Oh my god, that's probably cringy. Fluttershy screamed in pure terror, and dropped the parchment to the floor among the torn present paper and bands. Mortified and utterly confused over and what a question this was, she fell on her behind, turning her back in a little, but none the less preventing her to fall backwards with the scary object on the floor. The eye kept moving around as the chanting flashed brightly, and finally imploded, adding the light it created to the eye for purposes unknown to the Pegasus. However, when the light had flashed by, the eye had turned into a vortex which expanded from the circle. After just a second, it widened into a hole of glimmering lights. Big enough to fit a pony, it would be dumb enough to walk into it. As Fluttershy felt more tainting in her heart, all the animals in her woke up thanks to the strong light illuminating the room and odd noises. Birds flew out from their nests. Critters escaping their little homes ran all around the floor together. The angel who lost his head in an instant. He'd already been awake since he heard Fluttershy scream, but ignored it until now. Before a minute, um, before a minute had passed, all the animals escaped either to the upper level or in a dark corner where safety existed. As the vortex finally was wide enough to cover meters of space from the center, Yellow Pegasus panted with beads of sweat breaking from her body. She didn't understand anything else but the horror growing in her mind. Aware that this couldn't be good, but it was not until the swirling noises died out that she understood something else was going to happen. The cloud of glimmering dark blue light cracked like a water surface, allowing something totally different to emerge from the pool of obviously magic material. It rose high up in the air, almost reaching the ceiling as it slowly emerged with several identical-looking things next to it. Fluttershy's entire body trembled. Her jaw dropped and her eyebrows shot up. But as her eyes widened, they both reflected the monstrous being appearing from the magical pool. Four dark green, vine-looking limbs, all coated in an unknown substance dripping from them like sticky liquid. They all reached out several meters, swayed lightly from left to right to keep their balance. All of them croaked like they had necks and instantly pointed at Fluttershy, revealing their tight orifices at the end of each tentacle. They had no suction cups, so they couldn't be that obnoxious. Sadly enough, confusing the defenseless mare even more. What? She exclaimed and almost broke out in tears from the mere sight of this disgusting vine-looking things. But the appendages didn't pay any attention to her puny voice. Instead arched forward as the first one shot at her like a whip. The mare squealed and frightened as the wet and agile tentacle wrapped itself around her left hind leg and clenched, summoning a faint signal of pain to Fluttershy's brain. Before she could react to what was going on, another of the slitherly monsters whipped away to grab her other hind leg, now paralyzing her ability to get away at all. No, what are you doing? She hollered out as the rivers from her eyes expressed the sorrow, showing her rejection to this so far aggressive behavior. The slippery tentacles which held on her hind legs tensed, attempting to spread her limbs. Her screams intensified, with the only possible image in her head starting to become reality. Thus, her very reason for struggling back by floundering her hind legs. But no matter how hard she tried, the forelegs couldn't help due to the preciousness in her stomach preventing such actions. Instead, she could just grunt while helplessly trying to reach her suspended legs. Without any greater resistance, the two unoccupied tentacles threw themselves towards the two remaining targets in order to completely release the poor mare from any kind of mobility, aside from her weak wings. A snap of a second, their slippery flesh surrounded the pony's soft fur and certainly more drier skin, locking themselves around her fetlocks like she wore chained cuffs. The next moment, Fluttershy realized how trapped she actually was. Now the slimy limbs could move her just the way they wanted. The first thing on their list was to finally separate her hind legs from each other, opening wide for her pretty marehood to get exposed right in front of the illuminating pool her violators came from. The tentacles used more force by pressing down her forelegs mercilessly to the floor, giving her the position as if she already was going to give birth here and now. The terror was already consuming enough for her. Feeling this abandoned and scared at once was really nothing new for her, but this time it came with such an intense wave. The moment she thought they were actually going to kill her, that was until she opened her tear eyes and accidentally glanced at the magic circle emerging from the floor. From the middle of the four already summoned beings, another three identical ones slithered up the seamlessly bottomless vortex, raising up an arched position, aim a little lower and more precise at the middle. The suspended mare The suspended mirror gasps as the additions move slowly towards her spread thighs, causing her to scream out in the highest pitch while the events turn from bad to nightmarish. Her lungs almost overexerted themselves into one of the three idle monsters twitched to her ear-cracking noise. Just like that, I jumped over her body, aiming straight into the wide open hole, causing that annoying noise. Her voice choked instantly, and with the fat and sticky appendage stuffing her mouth full of alien flesh, going all the way down her throat for just a second before sliding up again. Fluttershy coughed from the violent attack, stunned long enough for the two outer tentacles to peacefully reach her nether lips. The innocent eyes kept crying, especially when they opened wide in pain and further denial. As her labia split open, so did her spincha from the intruders. Their already slippery skin proved to have no problems breaking through the tight openings, easily sliding inside each warm hole, explore her inner flesh while causing her pain and agony. The pony couldn't fight back. All her abilities was to lie here, completely suspended while her mouth, marehood, and anal were unwillingly penetrated, choking her with disgusting meat and violating her sacred grounds. Fluttershy felt shame with extremely vague pulses of pleasure moved inside her senses. These tentacles were at least as big as her stallion, if not even larger. Sadly, she didn't know how fast the other one in her rectum moved. Once it dug deeper to enlarge the rest of her warm anal, a shriek of aching bucked her mind to no end. She twisted and jerked her head all ways possible, searching for any way to break loose from this scene of rape. But the constricting tentacles just tensed further to keep her in place, while the others kept working. Once it dug deeper, I already read that. The one inside her stuffed pink slit moved further inside, pushing aside all blocking flesh to reach even deeper inside. Being the very pony who this abomination was inside, Fluttershy grit her teeth for each inch it slithered and moved around in her inner walls. The one inside her behind didn't got much deeper than a few inches before it started moving around carefully, like it waited for the tight rectum to get used to its large size. But the so far most disgusting part was without a doubt the tentacle in her mouth, jerking and waving back and forth in her mouth like as if she was giving a serious blowjob, without her actually doing anything at all but receiving. She almost put a little focus on what it tasted like, but it was completely unidentified. Was this how magic tasted? The Pegasus suddenly gasped and relaxed her inner mouth. The long appendage in her female cavern had reached its end, the opening to the womb. At that moment, the tentacle in her mouth stopped moving too, simply remaining in her mouth all still. Fluttershy's muffled whimpering and slight grunts didn't get anywhere in the air when a large dosage of excruciating fear woke up. A disgusting thing was just a few inches away from her full. Her eyes moved ever so slowly down to her belly, begging to Celestia nothing happened now. The tingle stopped moving after bumping into a very small and tight opening, remaining still for several seconds to further the poor mare's moment of absolute fear. There's no way it can get inside, however. After the short moment of stillness and silence, the sticky appendage ripped from her inside in an instant, rippling out a quick shot of pain in Fluttershy's brain as she threw her head back with a groan. The tingle slipped back in the dark blue pool. After a short moment, the dark pool of magic substance, disappearing as the troll apparently wasn't over. Fluttershy panted, relieved that it was finally out of her inner. She could still feel the uncomfortable intruder in her rectum, but then, but, but that sort of pain was excluded and ignored when her concern for the baby suddenly took up all place, and the one in her mouth was actually not so disturbing anymore. It was like it didn't exist there for a moment. Her tired head and body had already reached their limits. Have already reached their limits. When I was sorry, see a squirrel jumping around on the tree. Yep. And I continue on. And I had what and I continue on. What I had so. What I had so. What I had. Her tired head and body had already reached the limits of what they could take, but she still felt this wasn't really over yet. Did those things come to her? Came her just to dig inside her orifices and leave? Then why were the other ones still holding all four of her legs? She was just a second from finding out. Kieras picked up a sound coming from the dark blue glimmering pool, though she looked out from the floor again to see her swollen stomach blocking the side of the creepy hole in the floor. As she watched, a new appendage with the same thickness and agile movement appeared. This one had already differed itself from the others by making slight screeching noises. Fluttershy felt shivers up her spine as the awful noises sounded like a winged animal aimed at her. It was then she saw the absolutely biggest difference. Instead of a small orifice dripping in unknown fluid, two sets of razor-sharp teeth decorated the face of this tentacle, opening its mouth to reveal the other sets deeper inside its long, damp body. All of the upper rows drip what seemed to be some sort of saliva pouring from its mouth to the floor. In the background of its horrifying screech, Fluttershy hollered out from the top of her lungs, when its ultimate form of monstrosity from her imagination plunged towards their fragile sex. It was more brutal and merciless than the previous one, mauling past her sensitive flesh. The screams from her mouth weren't enough, but her teeth chewed on the medium, soft flesh in her mouth. A tentacle slipped out of her mouth, flinging itself around to escape the pain, giving the orifice it was supposed to silence an opportunity to scream out in pain. Ah! Please stop! Her desperate and high-pitched voice yelled, fully ignored by the new intruder in her marehood. She kept roaring. It kept going further. Finally, it hit her womb, bumping with a slam into the insignificant opening. Fluttershy grimaced from the utter aching that brought. One again silence as she looked down at the remaining body outside of her female sex. The tentacle, armed with teeth, opened its mouth wide, stretching the surrounding meat enough to let its jaws be wide open. A few even smaller appendages moved out from its mouth. Attaching themselves to the tight hole of the womb, intense. Fluttershy's scream echoed in the room, as her precious womb suddenly was ripped out in a few inches. Suddenly ripped open a few inches, like a bag of blood and water. A flood in the two substances gorged the disgusting tentacle as it poured out from the light hole of the wooden floor. The mare hollered and struggled, jerking the vines around her fetlocks to understand what happened to her. When she understood, it was her womb had opened. A most hideous realization came to her mind. Fluttershy widened her eyes and forgot the pain for a mere second. No, no, no! And like it was on cue. The carnivor's appendage plummeted inside the open wound, where the defenseless foal was. Its teeth sunk into the immature flesh, causing the unborn child to twitch before a chunk of its meat ripped off. Fluttershy repeated what she screamed. She could hear the noises, all the squishy noises from her moving belly. She could see the small bumps from the tentacles moving around inside her womb as they kept eating her full. Piece by piece, the sharp teeth ripped off a new piece of flesh and swallowed it down the internal grinder of more teeth. Blood splattered everywhere inside Fluttershy's womb. Pieces of meat steamed out. The sound of flesh being ripped apart and crunched filled her ears, as an internal imagination of the most unforgiving world took shape before her eyes. The monstrous tentacles shrieked before each bite. Wish I could hear it. She heard the monster screaming until it buried its teeth in her child's throat and finally killed it. Its body bumped everywhere, forcing the pony who was supposed to be a mother to see all the tumbles from her body and all the painful beats it received from the womb. It went on for the umbilical cord, turning it off from the foal without actually damaging it, before continuing to dismember and eat its dish of innocent flesh. Fluttershy could only cry, watch as her most precious treasure was consumed in a bloodbath inside her own stomach. She couldn't protect it. The foal couldn't protect itself. It was a helpless victim as the rest of its body parts fell off, only to be devoured in an instant. Her scream weren't just because of the otherworldly pain, but also the endless torments in her head when she saw the bitter reality. Her whole world fell into ruins, as indescribable signals raped her mind to no end. Soon she couldn't scream anymore. She could only grunt and occasionally groan, twitch a little as a large shock vibrated in her mind. Her ears deafened, she couldn't hear. Her eyes blurred, she couldn't see. Everything lost its meaning now. She couldn't see nor hear to understand the reality, but she could smell. She most certainly could smell. Smell the blood pouring out from her stuffed marehood. Her tears poured down as her tired vocal cord hardly could agree in the mere grunting. Her thoughts surrounded Big Macintosh. Why wasn't he here? What would he say? How would she explain this? Could she even live with this? Before she could answer her own question, the carnivore inside her womb was done. The last piece of blood-drenched meat was crushed between its teeth, allowing it to slip out from the wide open and empty womb, only to slide through the bloodied inner walls and out past her labia. A wave of blood splattered out on the walls. Fluttershy had her head laying down on the hard floor again. Her tears and sobbing coughs attracted the tentacle. Thus the reason why it extended over her body looked down her muzzle of sorrow. The poor mare didn't have to turn her eyes to see it. She saw the monster covered in blood. Now it swayed lightly to keep its balance, while aiming at her from meters distance. The mouth filled and razor-sharp teeth opened wide, spilling out a thickened waterfall of blood it swallowed during the ordeal over Fluttershy's face. She couldn't keep her mouth closed. She only knew whose blood this was. The shock itself was so strong she couldn't hold herself. About a gallon of the scarlet fluid filled her mouth, and not until she felt the taste of her own foal's blood. She became aware of the strong jerks in her stomach. She threw her head to the side and vomited up the blood of her latest meal, digested and warm. A puddle of brown, red, and whatnot escaped. The blood stopped raining down on her, finally done soaking her mane and face. Now she was ruined on the outside as well as on the inside. In all possible interpretations about the mind and body. The yellow mare coughed up the rest, forming more of the large puddle she laid in, while the darkening tentacle retreated back to the dark blue pool. Fluttershy couldn't think anymore, with the moment hovering over her memories. Only a partial wish for death passed by every now and then. But what pushed aside this idea was the large stallion still in her dreams. She knew there would be at least some sort of comfort. That's why she only tried to think of him, not the gruesome and mortifying fact that her stomach was a little smaller now. But it wasn't over just yet. As she almost passed out, the tentacle hanging above her head aimed at and for its old target again, plunging inside the mouth of its victim. Fluttershy didn't care. It could do whatever it wanted to her now, not that she gave a flying feather about it. However, as something new popped in the circle of magic full of magic, she wondered if there was death approaching. It was another tentacle, unique to the others and also its previous friend. This one was a bit fatter and had a much larger orifice on its tip. Its stickiness and slippery body was just like the others. However, without any tiny noise, it went in the same way like the previous one. Only it was much more blood and mingled in her flesh now. Mary let out a weak moan as her hole was penetrated again, leaving the rest to be as its new visitor had another goal in mind, without her knowledge. The intruding appendage reached the massacred womb, discovering its purpose now could be fulfilled inside this warm body and bloody dinner. The orifice of this tentacle expanded and widened out to form a suction cup, and as soon as it was of enough size, it attached itself to the enlarged hole of the womb. Fluttershy shivered, wondering why they kept doing this to her. Finally, she could ask herself why Twilight would do this. Was this intentional? No, it had to be some mistake. A horrible, horrible mistake. And no, she couldn't even imagine to reach consideration of forgiveness or intolerance to it. She was just completely destroyed. Not sure if she even wanted to live or die anymore. Meanwhile, the tentacle currently residing in the other hole, Fluttershy started moving. It had been inside her rectum during the feast, moving occasionally every now and then without getting noticed due to the other event's gruesome nature. Now it was time for it to serve a purpose too by moving deeper. It slithered in deeper upper anal, moving past the more filthy parts, and pressed even further. Even if her spirit was pretty much gone, Fluttershy simply couldn't ignore the tense ache as the tentacle broke in through the part of her bowl that wasn't her rectum, of her bowel that wasn't her rectum anymore. Her sore and exhausted lungs found energy to squeal, followed by a dying grunt as soon as the appendage in her mouth reacted to the puny voice, and without any warning, it shot down her throat, going several inches down until it expanded her neck to its size. The tortured mare widened her eyes as another tear among those many others broke out. She couldn't breathe. But the tentacle had a reason for its behavior. As soon as it traveled far enough, fluid started pumping from its roots in the dark blue circle. The other tentacle upper anal did the same, and then spraying out the goo traveling through it. Suddenly, Fluttershy couldn't feel anything where the slippery intruders traveled. Her gut slowly succumbed into numbness as a tranquilizing liquid poured from each vine-looking orifice. And when the temporary problem was solved, the tentacle inside her bowels kept digging further as the one in her mouth left her throat once again in peace. She could breathe again. but not without receiving a stain of sticky substance spraying over her bloody face without an effect. Somehow the thing going unnaturally deep inside her managed to shift in size, shrinking to get smaller as it entered the tighter and more narrow guts. Apparently it was an ability coming from its magical origin. With Fluttershy not being able to feel anything on the inside, the disgusting being inside her mare head started pumping too. However, since it was connected to her womb, it had a far more important thing to pump than merely tranquilizing liquid. As the first bloated mass went from the pool up in the long body, squeezing past Fluttershy's body and massacred sex, it ended up in the enlarged womb. She could still feel inside that part of her body, and there was something round and rather hard. Just a short blink of an eye later, another pump of the same size traveled through the tentacle inside her body, and another, and another. Load after load, and while the other monster dug past the remaining bowels, eggs of an alien kind stacked up in a pile inside the violated womb, tumbling around until the lack of space forced them together in a narrow formation. Fluttershy felt the load building up inside her, and she didn't want to know what in question these things filled her up with. But whatever it was, it had to be something bad after all nightmarish things they had done to her. But no matter what they had planned, she was still doomed to just lie down and watch as it continued. First eating her unborn foal, and then filling her up with their own offspring. This kind and naive mare didn't know these horrifying things could even happen. Was this real? Was she dreaming? Yes, this had to be a dream, because such an abomination like this couldn't exist. But no, it hurt, and you don't feel pain in dreams. Dream or not, the tentacle kept impregnating her with more eggs, until the last one went inside and she was full. Once the last egg was pumped inside her womb, the suction cup around her appendage sprayed something else than eggs. Now it was fluid, almost like the tranquilizing kind, only this one didn't make her feel numb at all. The question mark was about to form in the mare's head, but the time for that wasn't enough. Suddenly she felt a retching stomach, a very violent one too. And now she couldn't feel anything there either. She jerked her head several times, unable to get away from this progressing sickness, occupying her mind to the brim with malevolence. In the end, she closed her mouth as a load of vomit traveled up her throat again. But then she was forced to open again and finally let the filth out. Along with the thing that caused all this. In an eruption of disgusting puke shooting up like a fountain in the air, the tentacle which traveled all the way from Fluttershy's anal through her bowels had finally emerged from her mouth. The Pegasus couldn't scream or even know what to do other than just stare at this horror. The slimy and filthy monster waved and kept shooting and warm liquid all over the floor, soon stopping when it realized it was outside again. But now the thin body of this extremely long tentacle was all inside Fluttershy, filling to every bowel connected to her food digestion. And thanks to its numbing poison, she couldn't feel a thing. She stared, unable to breathe again, and fully assured she didn't want her to remember this. Even if it was a dream, she couldn't stand living with it. The sight of this struggling thing, currently forcing out her tongue while roasting from her sphincter, together with the fact that her stomach's bloated and round again, had made all this into a scene that convinced her to see one and only ending to this. She was going to die. And the heat and the waiting moment, the eggs inside Fluttershy's womb bathed in the fluids the planting tentacles showered them in. It was a small quantity which increased and got stuck into all the hard shells like glue. The sticky substance worked with nutrients, processing what and processing what was going to be the very fulfilled meaning and purpose of the otherworldly creatures. The eggs found what they needed from the helpful fluids, soon enlarging as they grew in size, maturing to hatch from where they were. All they needed was a warm and fertile ground, and nothing could stop the ultimate goal for these hard containers of life. Fluttershy's lungs were blocked from all oxygen. Her world was dying again. In the blur, she could only see her swollen belly vibrating and moving. The eggs hatched. It was tight and warm, loose and cold. Just about enough and way too much. Her eyes rolled back as the last tears she could muster fell from her tear canal. The world faded more and more. Reality grasped her soul and embraced her in a hollow hug, telling her it was all right. If she could, her lips would have smiled. In an explosion, all her walls in the cottage were stained and repainted in a second with thick and scarlet fluids. The ceiling and floor had several bits of squishy substance stuck to each surface alongside the blood, like a maddened painter creating a piece of angered art. The room was redecorated in a grim aura from the warm blood dripping on the walls. The sparkle in the once timid and kind pony's eyes disappeared, leaving behind the defiled and lifeless corpse and a pitiful scene of breeding. But what had hatched from this body had no respect for its grounds. Instantly looking around in their new gained shape and bodies to see their first source of meal. The tentacle still inside the den body quickly slipped out, leaving the newly hatched nest for the infants to consume in the way they had to. All the appendages released the yellow corpse, covered in blood and guts, with a ripped open belly, withdrawing to the dark blue blood pool of magic, until none remained. Soon the pool turned into a vortex again, shrinking in size, color, and shape, until it dispatched itself into the bleached parchment. Dozens of small critter-like beings crawled out from the remains, noticing all the gory organs around their birth grounds. Without hesitating, they instantly went for everything they could reach. Little shrieking and blood-soaked monsters. They were far away shaped as tentacles which had planted them. They had 4 limbs and a little round body together with a tiny neck attached with a head. Their black color and what seemed to be future wings separated them too. They were not ponies, but not far from it either. Parchment laying on the ground was blank, all symbols gone. 30 minutes later, when the moon still stood high over the lands of Equestria, a red stallion hurried along the path to the cottage. He had been working overtime in order to make sure his family could last another week without his help, which sadly forced him into a very long day today. He reached the door, panting calmly as he fixed his mane with a quick hoof comb over. He figured Fluttershy was probably worried sick of him and the baby. The least thing he would do was look a little decent. He couldn't hear much from inside as he put his ear to the door, but he could also figure perhaps his mare friend had gone to bed anyways. Without a doubt, he carefully pushed open the unlocked door, smiling in case she would sit inside the darkened room just to wait. The door creaked open. In a united attack, dozens of monsters smashed up against the door and swarmed over the big stallion, while he was in a state of shock. His deep voice could only shout as several bodies hardly big as his mare friend landed around him, shrieking in the background of the buzzing wings. All of them surrounded him, joining in the first feats of what they really needed. In a distance, within the dying echoes of Big Mac's scream and coughs, Twilight Sparkle the unicorn sat on a little hill with a fine view over the Ice Head cottage. She could hear the fine pony slowly succumbing to the wills and hunger of the hatchlings, and she couldn't be more pleased. A little giggle escaped her mouth as she curved her lips into a smile. Looks like my spell still works. She stated and looked down at the soft and chilly grass on the ground. Right next to her, she had a stockpile of identical scrolls stacked in 2 saddlebags. The magical horn focused on the bags, using a telekinetic spell while standing up on all four. The belt swept around her waist, locking firmly and getting adjusted so they looked okay before she took her first step to Ponyville. And now to get on these all to the other bears. Then we can start over. With those words, the lavender unicorn released the most vile grin her lips, perform up at the moon. A flash of green surged to her reflecting eyes. The end. What I know? What I know? Let's say that concludes my 400 subscriber special. And there's one thing I must say though. It was great working with all you, getting to 400 fellow gamers, and well, kind of really makes a man feel pride, doesn't it? Basically, knowing to have so many loving fans like all of you, and well, I really appreciate it, and so this goes to all 400 of you. Yeah, so from the heart. Yep. Yep. So, as I always say, saying it to my friend Smudge Gator. Until next time.